Ha! All right, we are live on Zoom. We are live on Facebook. And we're live on Torah Anytime as well. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to mute everybody over here. I do apologize, just to making sure that we don't get too much sound in the background. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Thank you for those on Torah Anytime. Please, if you want to get in touch, it's davideisenberg@gmail.com. And anybody who would like to get some great Torah content could check out torahanytime.com for all sorts of really great Torah stuff. Okay, we're going to start Parasha Chukas. Parasha Chukas is a whole bunch of different things within it. So let's start with the following. Hashem spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, saying, we're on page 838 in the Art Scroll. This is the decree of the Torah who commanded. Speak to me. They should take for themselves a red heifer, which is wholesome, without a blemish. Ashem Bomum doesn't have any blemishes. And Asher oil, which has not had a yoke on it. And they give it to Lazar Coin, and you turn it into a carbon, etc., etc. That's what the Gemara tells us. That's what the Pasuk tells us over here. Now, the word Chukas HaTorah, a chok, a decree, is something that we understand is that Hashem said so, and there's no specific reason for it, or there's no reason that we can come up with. It's a chok. It is a mitzvah without a reason. That's how a chok, that's how we define this idea. And therefore, if you look at Rashi over here, Rashi will tell you, Zos Chukas HaTorah, the Vishasot Nomas Olam Manenes Yisrael. They make fun of the Jewish people to say, what is this mitzvah? What reason is there? Therefore, the Torah tells you, no, it's a chok, it's a decree. You have no permission to try to figure out what this is. You can try to think about it, but even Shlomo HaMelech himself says, Amati achkama, I thought I will be clever, but in reality, it is still very far from me. So we see over here that the Torah is describing this mitzvah as a chok, as something that we cannot understand, and as something beyond our grasp. The strange thing about it is, if you look at Rashi later, Rashi, first of all, goes through the regular translation, and then after all is said and done, he says, Zeh Pirusha will be on page 842 in the Art Scroll at the end of Pasuk Chav Beis. He says, this is explanation, Lefi Mashma Bil Chayser, when you deal with the halachas and we deal with the actual reading of the verses. However, there's also a midrash that's brought over here in the name of Rav Moshe Adashin, and this is the following. You should take for yourself para aduma. They take for themselves. So Rashi says they have to pay it for them themselves, because they were the ones that paid for the Egel Hazov. They're the ones that paid for the golden calf, so therefore they now need to pay for this as well. Para aduma. Mashal ben Shifcha. If you have a ben Shifcha, shetina palti. If you have a maidservant and she has a young child, and this young child made an absolute mess in the palace. So what we're going to do, we're going to call his mother and say, hey, you his mom? Yeah, we'll clean it up. Do something about it. You can't just allow him to make the mess over here any way he wants to. Same thing is true. You have an egel, which is a calf, and you have a para, which is the mother, and tava ha'aim, the mother should come, v'tekaneach tzas b'no, and she should be the one that cleans up the mess that her son left. The para aduma is there to clean up the mess that was left behind from the egel azar, from the golden calf. That's why we have this para aduma. So I heard today, I went running and I was listening to a shir on Torah Anytime. See, even I listen to Torah Anytime. So I listen to shir on Torah Anytime by Rav Melech Biderman. Rav Melech Biderman is one of the foremost magidim of our time. He lives in Israel and he speaks all over the place in Israel, and he tells the most amazing, fantastic stories, and he's got great divrei Torah. You can catch his stuff on Torah Anytime if you speak Yiddish or if you speak Hebrew. Very, very interesting to listen to. Very, very enjoyable. So he brought a Dvar Torah, I think he says in the name of Rav Yitzchak Gavarka. He asked the following question. He says, I don't understand. We started off saying that we don't have a reason for the para aduma. We don't know why we had this red heifer. And then he says, at the end, Rashi says, wait a minute. This is Zera, that what's called Tava Aim. This is kapara for the egel. That the reason we have this red heifer is to forgive you for the egel azov. for the golden calf. So decide, there's no reason or there is a reason. I can understand it, I cannot understand it. What's going on over here? Says this Rabbi Yitzchak Abarka the following idea. What happened by the Egel? Do you know what happened by the Egel? The Jewish people were very into knowing exactly what's gone wrong. If you look at the verse, you look in your art scroll Chumashim, you'll be looking in Pashas Kisisa, and they come to Aaron, and they say the following. Verse, page 492, chapter 32, verse 1. Lamed Beis Aleph. Vayara the people saw Kiboshu Moshe Letzman. Moshe was late. He was tardy in coming down from the mountain. Vayikol al Aaron, and so the people gathered up against Aaron, page 494 now. Vayom they said, Kum asilon elim, go and make for us a god, or make for us a leader. Asher yelchu lefanim, that goes before us. Ki zeh Moshe ish, this Moshe Rabbeinu asher lo nemetz the time that took the time. Egypt lo yadan mehoyalo. We don't know what happened to him. We don't know what's going on with Moshe Rabbeinu. We need to know exactly what it is. There's a problem over here. We need to have certainty. We need to have clarity. And that uncertainty and lack of clarity led the Jewish people to sin. That's what led the Jewish people to create this golden calf, because they said, we don't know what happened to Moshe Rabbeinu. We don't know what's going on over here. This need for having everything explained, this need for having certainty. So they come to Aaron and they say, you need to provide us with a certainty. So either tell us where Moshe Rabbeinu is, and if you cannot tell us where Moshe Rabbeinu is, well, you're going to have to put up a replacement for him. We can't just have this when nobody knows what this guy is. He's the leader. This doesn't work. It doesn't go like that. That is what the Jewish people are saying. And so therefore, what is the remedy for a control freak? Right? What's the remedy for somebody who constantly needs to be in control? What would you say? So the remedy for somebody who constantly needs to be in control is to teach him how to let go. No, you can't have everything your way. You can't have it always just the way you want it. Sometimes you need to have it differently. Again, as long as he understands that, that concept, it's not for everyone, but as long as he understands the concept that it can't always go my way. Sometimes it goes my way, sometimes it doesn't go my way. And for people who are constantly believe that they have to be in control, many times what they do with them is they put them through situations. If you want to give them some kind of remedy, you put them through situations where they're not in control anymore. And they have to learn with to live with a situation where it's totally out of control, and they have to be okay with it. That's very hard. Somebody who's a control freak. But the Jewish people here say, we want to know what happened to Moshe Rabbeinu. We need to be in control. We need to know what happened over here. And Aaron says, I don't know what you want. What do you want from me? Well, then make for us a golden calf. Do this for us, do that for us. Very much into the idea that they need to have it exactly controlled, exactly the way they want it. Says this Rabbi Yitzchak. On the one hand, the idea of the Parah Adumah is there to forgive for the sin of the golden calf. That's what this Gemara is telling us. That's what this Rashi is telling us. You have this young child, the child of a maidservant who made a mess in the palace, and the mother of the maidservant has to come and has to clean it up. Similarly over here, the Parah Adumah is there to clean up the mess left behind by the Parah Adumah, by the Egel. What is the mess left behind by the Egel? What did the Egel cause, and what are we trying to undo? The Egel caused the idea or the feeling or the thought that I need to know exactly what's going on always and at all times, and I cannot be left in the dark. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give you a mitzvah. And that mitzvah is going to be a chayk. That mitzvah is not going to be understandable. You won't be able to get this mitzvah. As much as you think you can understand it, you think you'll be clever, but in reality, it's going to be very far away from you. You're not going to understand this. I'm telling you this a priori, you're not going to understand this. And that's the point. The kapara for the Egel is having a mitzvah that you cannot understand. Having to do something that the control freak has to let go and say, you say to the control freak, you need to do this. Why? Tell me why. I can't tell you why. So why should I do it? Because God said so. I only like to do things I understand. Exactly, says God. We need to get you out of that situation. We need to get you out of that mindset. We need to wake you up and shake you up from this thing. You can't always understand everything. You can't always have everything the way you want it to be. Sometimes it will be like that, sometimes it won't be like that. Therefore, he says, there's no steer over here. There's no contradiction. Yes, the paraduma is there to forgive the sin of the golden calf. But what was the sin of the golden calf? Needing to have absolute certainty. And how do we forgive that absolute certainty? By creating a situation of lack of clarity and making the Jewish people live through it, accept it, and work with it anyway. Okay, so that's the first idea. The very beautiful idea brought out over here by this Rabbi Yitzchak Avarki, who was quoted by Rabbi Chviduman. Okay, that is the first idea. Next one. You move to page 842. So we've now finished with the paraduma. And now comes the strange thing. The entire congregation makes it to this desert of Tzin in the first month, i.e. in Nisan, and they dwelled in Kodesh. Miriam dies at Tikar. She gets buried there. There's nothing to drink. They come to Moshe and Aaron, and they said, if we had died when our brothers died before God, why did you bring us over here to this desert? We should die here, us, all our cattle, all our wilderness. They're starting to complain. But you know what's interesting over here, which is quoted by Razaman Sorotskin? He says, have a look at what happens after Miriam dies, and have a look what happens after Aaron dies, and have a look what happens after Moshe Rabbeinu dies. It's interesting, he keeps on looking at what he calls the three royim, the three different shepherds of Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael in that generation had three main shepherds, namely Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. So let's have a look. It's a bit further down in this week's Parasha. Aaron dies. So you read about Aaron dying. So you read in page 848, verse 28. Ve'afshed Moshe's Aaron's begurav. Moshe Rabbeinu took off the special clothing of the Kohen Gadol that Aaron HaKohen had. Va'yaveshosam as Elazar, but I'll put them on his son Elazar, Aaron's son Elazar. Va'yamas Aaron Shom Rosh Hahar. Aaron dies over there on the top of the mountain. Va'yer Moshe Elazar and Moshe and Elazar come down from the mountain. Va'yeru kol ha'edah. All of the Jewish people saw Ki gova Aaron, that Aaron died. Va'yifkis Aaron Shloshim Yom Kol Beis Yisrael. And everybody cried over Aaron's death for 30 days. Okay? That's what happens after Aaron dies. Now, what happens after Moshe Rabbeinu dies? Parasha Zos HaBracha. We read in page 1122. We read in verse 5. Perek Lamed Daled Pasuk Hey. Moshe Rabbeinu died, the servant of God, in the land of Moab Api Hashem, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, buried him by Gai Beretz Moab, in this place that has nobody knows where he's buried. When he was 120 years old, his eyesight didn't dim, neither did his cheek sort of come down. Was his, it wasn't diminished at all. Vayivku b'nei Yisrael es Moshe Avos Moshe 30 yom. B'nei Yisrael died about Moshe Rabbeinu and Avos Moab 30 days. Vayitmu yemei b'chi eva Moshe. The days of the mourning of Moshe Rabbeinu finished, and then Yeshua ben Nun takes over, etc., etc. So we read twice about Aaron and about Moshe Rabbeinu. They both die, and there's this major mourning amongst the Jewish people. And yet Miriam dies. Torah doesn't say anything about mourning. Torah doesn't tell us Miriam dies and everybody was devastated. Now, even if you'd expect maybe the men not to be devastated by this, and I think they should be, but even if you say, well, you know what, the men had nothing to do with Miriam, so therefore they weren't so devastated by it. All right, even if the men weren't devastated, I'll tell you who would be devastated, the women, was their leader. When Rebbetzin Kanievsky, Rav Chaim Kanievsky's wife, died about 11 years ago in Eretz Yisrael, she was a very famous woman. She was the daughter of Rav Yashiv Zatzal, and she was the wife of the Gadol Ador of Chaim Kanievsky, and she was well known for her warmth, for her power and her prayers. ArtScroll even put out a biography about her. And what's crazy about this ArtScroll biography, I know this doesn't sound so crazy to you, but it even has pictures of her. Yeah, yeah, I know. But this is about as this is how intense this biography actually is. It's that forward, so to speak, forward thinking as far as ArtScroll is concerned. That normally they don't really have pictures of women in all these ArtScroll books, and yet this is a biography. It's about this thick. It's a massive biography, 300, 400, 500 pages about this woman, about all sorts of great stories about her and the things that she did. Tremendous woman. When she passed away, the women of Bnei Brak and the women around the world mourned terribly. I remember I went to see Rav Chaim Kanievsky when I was about married for 3 months. We have good friends here in Manchester who had a connection by Rav Chaim Kanievsky, as do many other people. So his brother, who lives in Bnei Brak, is a chavrusa with a gabbai of Rav Chaim Kanievsky. He learns together with the person who attends Rav Chaim Kanievsky, and so he allowed this guy to come in. And with him, he also allowed me to come in. So what happened is we went around the back of the building, and they led us through a different entrance. There are 2 entrances. There's one, the main entrance that everybody goes through, and we went through the back entrance. And I'm standing there in the front room of Chaim Kanievsky, and I'm listening to the fellow talk to Rav Chaim Kanievsky. Now, Rav Chaim Kanievsky doesn't say very much. He's not like a very talkative individual. He sits and learns all day long. That's all he does. So he came in, he says, you know what, I have a friend of mine who needs parnasa, bracha v'atzlacha. And I got a cousin that needs a refuah shalema, bracha v'atzlacha. And he's going on and on and on, telling this Rav Chaim Kanievsky all of his sorrows and all of his issues. And Rav Chaim Kanievsky kept on giving him brachas. He wasn't kicking him out. But I was in the hallway, in the foyer, and I have Rav Chaim Kanievsky's son with me. And he's next to me, he's pacing. He's like, this guy's taking way too long. He's taking way too long. What's he doing? Why is he saying so much? Why is he asking so many brachas? He's got to stop. He was getting more and more agitated every day. And suddenly, boom, the door slammed open. He goes, you're finished, out, And he goes, Rav Chaim Kanievsky goes, bracha v'atzlacha. Then the guy looks at me and goes, go inside, get your bracha and get out. So I went inside, I sat down, and he says to me, bracha v'atzlacha, and I moved on. It was still, it was amazing to sit in the room, just myself with a God Ador was still something tremendous. Now, whilst I was there, my wife went on the ladies' side to see the Rebbets. And there were many women that came to see the Rebbets, and then she gave brachas out, and she gave my wife a little card. I remember this card, we have it at home still. She gave her a card with nishmas inside it, the nishmas prayer that we say on Shabbos morning, and she told her, my wife at the time, we hadn't had children yet, and my wife had an operation, and so we weren't so sure what was going to be happening, because it was just very nerve-wracking, and she says, don't worry, you'll have children, and when you have your child, and you should take this with you, and you should say this after the birth. And my wife took it with her to all of our children's births, and after every child's birth, she took out this nishmas. She washed her hands negel maser just to clean herself after having had the baby. And within the first hour of having had the baby, she always pulled out this nishmas that she received from Rebbets and Kanievsky, and she always said that nishmas. And Baruch Hashem, we had 6 kids, so it's I don't know if the 6 kids came because of Roch of the Rebbets, but certainly there was something very, very special about the woman, very, very special lady. So that the fact that her passing, the passing of Miriam here, should be just ignored entirely, should not become something that should create any sort of mourning amongst the Jewish people, and that the Torah feels it doesn't want to mention there was any mourning, says Rav Zalman Zorotsky, I don't understand. Why is nobody mourning Miriam's death? Why they only mourn Aaron's death? Why they only mourn Moshe's death? He says there's another thing that we read over here. If you look at the verse again, Vatamas Sham Miriam dies there, Vatikova Sham, and she's buried there. Well, why does it say Sham twice? She dies there and she's buried there. She dies and is buried there. You don't need to say there. Okay? Now, you might say, okay, it's not such a great question. It's not like, it's not so difficult. You're right, it's not the most difficult question you've ever heard on Chumash, but I think he makes a point with it, and that's the following. He says that with Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, you'll find that each one of them has something different. Moshe Rabbeinu, everybody knew that he was dying. But v'lo yada ishas kfurasa. Nobody knew where he's buried, right? So you have only half of the piece of the puzzle. You know that your leader died. You don't know where he is. It's very, very difficult because we don't know where Moshe Rabbeinu is. Even nowadays, nobody has any idea where the cave of Moshe Rabbeinu is. That's number one. Aaron, everybody knew where he was buried because he went up to the mountain in front of everybody. But nobody knew when he was dying. Until afterwards, it says, Vayiru kol ha'eda kimeis Aaron. everybody saw that Aaron HaKohen died. They had to, what do you mean everybody saw? There was a special nest that the Kodesh Baruch Hu made. People said, oh, it cannot be that Aaron died. So he had to show them that Aaron had died. And then once they saw that Aaron had died, even though they knew where he was buried, they didn't know that he was dying. And only once he had died, they had found out that he was dying. So both of them, both Aaron and Moshe, either of them, we didn't know either when they died or where they died. Miriam, Miriam, she died there. Everybody knew when she died. Batikavar Sham, she was buried there. Everybody knew where she was buried as well. And he says, Moshe Rabbeinu lived to ripe old age, as did Aaron, as did Miriam. And so he says, many times you will find when people live a long life, the amount of avelus, the crying, the intensity of the mourning is much less. He says, when you have people, when you hear tsaros, you hear a story like the story that we heard in Meron, of young people who have just gone to take care, to go daven. And then you find out that never 45 people died there. Young people, young fathers, yeshiva bachrim, young children, young married men. Terrible. It was the mourning was just awful. It's really, really terrible. But compare that. Let's say you hear about somebody that's 105. I've had once or twice people that over 100 that have passed away in our community. But all of their family members, whilst they were all very sad, the mourning could not compare to the mourning of somebody within the community that had died very early. We've had people in the community that have died very young during the time that I've been here. If you think of Stuart Foster, you think of Howard Davis, you think of Pete Brody. You went to those Levias, it was heart-rending. It was much, much worse because people like, it's a young man and he left us too early and what happened, et cetera, et cetera. As when you go to the Levaya of someone like Jules Green, 103, or Sadie Klein, also at 103. Whilst of course it is sad that they passed away, but they had such a long, fulfilled life that when they did pass away, nobody said, oh, this is so tragic. People said, they had a beautiful life. They set up beautiful families. They have children and grandchildren they can be proud of. And you know what? They had tremendous nachas. They lived a full life. It's not tragic. It's sad, but it's not tragic. I think that's what my father used to say about certain people. When you had people that died at a good old age, ripe age, he always used to say, it is sad, but it's not tragic. When somebody dies young, it's tragic. Or when certain things are missing within that. So you have somebody who's a leader amongst the Jewish people. You have Moshe Rabbeinu. So Moshe Rabbeinu is 120 years old. They say, well, look, he's not the youngest. He took us out. He's done it. He's had a full life. He's done a brilliant job of his lifetime. But nobody knows where he's buried. Oh, that's tragic. That made the Jewish people very, very sad. Aaron, we knew where he was buried, but nobody when he died, and then they had to be told sort of in a roundabout way that he died. Tragic. But Tomash Miriam was very straightforward. She was an elderly woman who died, and everybody knew that she passed away, and everybody knew where she was buried. And he says the tragedy of that just wasn't the same. And therefore the Jewish people, we don't read about the Jewish people mourning Miriam anywhere near as much as we read about how the Jewish people mourned Aaron and Moshe, because in reality she wasn't mourned the same way, because people didn't see her death as tragic as the one of Moshe and Aaron, because there wasn't under tragic circumstances. They said that's not to take away from Miriam. That's not to take away from the great woman that she was, or the tremendous personage within Klal Yisrael. She still was this great leader amongst Klal Yisrael. It's just because it wasn't the same level tragedy, the Jewish people didn't react in the same way. Okay, there is a very interesting Emes Liakov, Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. He writes the following. We're on page 844. Final word on the page. So this is Perek Chof Pasuk Yud Aleph. Vayishlach Moshe malachim Kodesh Edom. Moshe Rabbeinu sent out messengers from this city of Kodesh to the king of Edom. Saul says, your brother Israel. It's also all of the different hardships that have befallen us. They went to Egypt. We were in Mitzrayim for a long time. The Egyptians were terrible to us, and now we're out. Can we go around your thing, etc., etc. We go to them, he says, and Edom says to them, no, I will not allow it. You cannot pass by me. He says, no, we'll just go straight. We won't take anything. Whatever we take, we will pay for it. And Edom says, no, we're not going to let you go through. And right after that, we read over here that Aaron Cohen dies. We read over here, and it says the following. This is verse 23. Hashem said to Moshe and Aaron in Har, Al Gvul Eretz Edom Lemor, on the border of Eretz Edom, saying, why do we tell you the border of Eretz Edom? Magid tells us, says Rashi, nation is Chabu Khan Liskav Esav Parasha, because they tried to come close to Esav. Nippertzu Maseim v'Chosra Tzadik Gazeh. There, they lost out, and they lost this special tzaddik. So he says that is because why? Because you said Ko Omar Achicha Yisrael. When you referred to Edom, when you referred to the nation of Esav, you said Ko Omar Achicha Yisrael. So says your brother, O Israel. Okay? So Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky asked the question, if you look in Pashas Ki Seitze, you will find that there's certain people that are not allowed to join the Jewish people. And one of those people is the Edomi, somebody who comes from the nation of Edom, from Amalek. So it says, this is page 1054 in Revi, where it says Devarim Perikov Gimel Pasuk Ches, verse 8. Lo sasaiv Adomi ki ochichahu. Shouldn't reject an Edomite because he is your brother. Lo sasaiv Mitzri. You shouldn't reject an Egyptian ki gar yisav atzo, because you were a sojourner in his land. So Bonim Hashavadam Dosh, Ishim, children of theirs, the third generation, Yavalam Mikal Hashem, can marry into the Jewish people, as opposed to Ammon and Moab cannot marry into the Jewish people. So we see over here that the Torah says, Lo sasayev Adomi, you cannot reject an Edomite for he's your brother. So the Torah says he's your brother. Now the Jewish people say to the Edomites, Ko amar achicha Yisrael, so says your brother Israel. You call them your brother? Can't do that. For that you get punished. Ask Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, if the Torah itself says that the Edomites are our brothers, what's wrong with the Jewish people saying to the Edomites, you're our brothers? We're only saying how the Torah referred to them. Show me anything wrong with that. Says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky an important thing, and I think this is an important lesson for us to know in dealing with people. Sometimes we have to deal with nice people. Sometimes you don't have to deal with nice people. You have to deal with people that aren't so nice. Sometimes the people you're going to deal with are tzaddikim, and sometimes, unfortunately, the people you're going to deal with are the opposite. And you have to realize, on the one hand, when you deal with individuals that are not righteous individuals, you will find that the individuals sometimes, even though they're difficult, you're going to have to be very courteous to them anyway. If you want to get your way, if you want to get what you need, you're going to have to be courteous. You can't walk over to the person whom you don't like and start yelling at them, screaming at them, bossing them around. It just doesn't work. You have to be nice about what you request, otherwise you won't get it. Right? That's true. However, even though you need to be nice to people, you don't have to bend over backwards to flatter them. You don't want to get close to them unnecessarily. There are times where, in order to be able to get what you want or to get what you need, you will need to befriend, or you will need to deal with people that are not really your type. You'll need to deal with people that you don't really think are the nicest people. You don't really like them so much, but sometimes you have to deal with them anyway. But you know what you do? You're nice, you're courteous, you do whatever gets done, whatever you need to do, and then you walk. There's no extra niceties. You don't invite them to your house for a meal. You don't go out with them to the pub for a drink. You don't do any of that. You need something done. Okay, you know what? If you're going to yell at the person, you're not going to get what you want. You know, if they yelled at the Edomites, and they would have said to them, let us through now, well, that would have caused a war. So they have to say, excuse me, can we please go through now? But excuse me, I'd just like to ask you, can we please go through? the Jewish people would like to get to the other side of your land. That's okay. You don't have to be nasty. On the other hand, even though you're not being nasty, you don't have to start becoming their best friends. So says your brother, we really are in this together, and then you decided to book out, and I was left carrying the whole thing, and so therefore at least feel bad for me and let me through your land. I am your brother, don't forget that. Ooh. What's this whole brother talk? What's this whole talk of us sort of being one nation, we're one people? That's too much. Therefore the Torah says, you cannot reject him. Yes, he is your brother, and therefore you're not allowed to reject him because the third generation is not to marry into the Jewish people. But even though you should see him as your brother and the fact that you don't reject his children, okay, but how close do you need to get with this guy? Not at all. Keep away from him. You don't want to really be close to these people because they're not nice people. You just, in order to know that it is possible for you to have a relationship with these people and for them to join the Jewish people, therefore, that's why you can be close with them. Okay. Just trying to think, should we share our last idea? We'll leave it for now. Maybe we'll leave it over here. Okay, so let's leave it over here for tonight. Thank you so much to all of you who've joined me on Facebook Live. Thank you for those who joined me on Zoom. Thank you to those who joined on Torah Anytime. Again, as we've mentioned previously, you can get in touch with us at gmail.com. Look forward to seeing you in Mitzvah Shem next week.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you.